4 decades later, Brad Zaun is sort of back where he began, but on the other end of things. Here's what I mean. As a young entrepreneur in his early 20s, he had turned to the Small Business Administration for a loan when he couldn't find money anywhere else. He wanted to take over a hardware store in central Iowa. He did it, and he did it for years. Then he had a career in real estate and sales and marketing and the state legislature. But now he is leading 4 states as a regional administrator for the SBA. And he also brings a promise that he will focus on rural America. Hi, I'm Dave Price. Moving in when a giant beef processing plant closes, providing free services to entrepreneurs in rural communities, and connecting capital to increase competition for the Big Four. Those are all among the priorities that he will stress in our conversation this week for this former longtime state legislator who impressed a future president of the United States. Well, sir, welcome. Good to see you. Perhaps it's a rarity that we have you sitting in one place for 30 minutes, huh?
Yeah, that's true. So it's good to see you, Dave. You're a good friend. You have been all the years that I've known you.
Well, I appreciate that. I knew you in a former life. Let's talk about your current life. We can talk about your political background, all that stuff if we get to that later. But you do spend a lot of time on the road with this new gig. So what's that like?
Well, I cover my responsibilities the states of Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, and Kansas. I'm probably on the road probably 60 to 70% of the time, just meeting with business owners or our lending partners or economic development groups. So it's just it's an awesome job, a great opportunity.
And your 4-state region, they're close enough, so realistically, you can jump in the car if you have to. You know, you can fly, I suppose, too. But I would assume that proximity helps you stay connected to not only the staff, but the people you serve?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, we've got district offices all over the Midwest, and I'm in touch with our district directors on a daily basis. I pretty much, for the most part, drive to most of my locations. I've got the farthest locations would be St. Louis and Wichita. If I could catch a direct flight, which Southwest Air just disconnected from Des Moines to St. Louis, you might know, because you're a Cardinals fan. But yeah, typically I just drive and I build trips. I don't just go out for one meeting. I'll work my way to wherever I'm going to. And once I get to my location that I'm going to be at and stay overnight in a hotel, I build a trip. Usually I've got, 5 to 10 meetings in a 2-day period when I'm traveling.
The core mission of SBA, I'm curious what this is like for you to now lead a region when you relied on the SBA as a young guy in your 20s, when you found a hardware store that you were convinced you could turn around and make it work. And the SBA is really what helped you out, right? You maybe couldn't have done it without?
I could not have, because I talked to banks and I went through what we call our small business development centers at Drake University at the time. And they helped me with my projections and helped me fill out all the paperwork that was needed to get the guarantee. At that time, it was a 60% guarantee. And once you get that, and that's one thing I would tell all the people that listen to your podcast, is that once you go through that process, and of course, our small business development centers will tell you, hey, this is a bad idea. You can't cash flow this. You're not going to be able to make your payments. They'll tell you right there. But once you get through that process, most all banks will take that loan, because at the SBA, we don't actually loan the money directly to the business owners that are out there. What we do is you would go to your community bank and get that loan through them.
One of your passions, which has been a passion for you for a long time, is rural development. Now in this new gig, you already knew, especially where we're talking in Iowa, you have seen how a lot of our towns in the state of Iowa, and this has been mirrored at many of the other Midwestern states and frankly some other states across the country, kind of hollowing out, right? I mean, we have fewer people working on the family farm than they did when our parents and grandparents were part of that generation. What are you seeing in there? And will you talk a little bit about how SBA is trying to connect in some of these rural communities to give them some kind of economic stability?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because it's something I want to talk about. Is President Trump has made it a major initiative to improve the rural parts of the United States. So we have our marching orders to spend a lot of time in the rural parts. And you're right about some of the small towns that are struggling out there. It really, Dave, when I travel all over the 4 states, Iowa and all those states have the same challenges in these rural communities. So our job is to try to deploy into those areas cash and focus on rural parts of the Midwest. We've got several programs that we'll probably talk about, but it has really been, I've got a great example in the state of Nebraska where a Tyson plant is closing, where the population's 10,000 people and there's 4,200 employees that are going to lose their job. That community is going to be hit extra hard. So I have had our people, and I have not been there yet, but I've had our Omaha district office get out there, meet with the chamber, meet with the economic development people, work with the state of Nebraska to make sure that we give opportunities not only for the existing businesses because they're going to be hit very hard, but to anybody that's that has been laid off that might have had a dream in regards to owning a business. And so we like I said, our efforts, and we're working with the USDA with that because they've got some incredible programs, and HUD as well. One thing has changed under this administration, President Trump's administration, is, and I'm told because I'm new to this, that federal agencies didn't talk to federal agencies. It was more of a competition thing, and it is obviously a great fit for us to work with the USDA and HUD because of some of these challenges.
You are not the top decision maker. You got a presidential administration calling the shots on a lot of things. You take this job and you find out that essentially the staff's going to be about 40% smaller, something like that overall across the country. So you got to make that work. Now you can have conservative principles about operating leaner and all that kind of stuff, but that's got to be a tough process to go through, both the personnel wise, but then in the customer service aspect. So how do you do that?
Well, the challenge is in my area, we've had a reduction of 43% of the SBA employees. We're running it like a business. I'm happy to report, it was a struggle, but I'm happy to report that we've filled most of those positions. And my loans for the region of the 4 states were up 13% this last year with 43% reduction in staff. We've got the most incredible, dedicated people that have stayed along. And these people really, they do what they're asked to do. It doesn't matter who's in charge of the White House or whatever that is. I've got employees that have been with the SBA for 30 years, and they've seen all kinds of changes. Obviously, each president, I should say, has their own priorities. And I can tell our loans are up right now. In regards to customer service, again, we've hired a lot of new people, and we're all customer service focused. And some of the people, all of them took the early retirement. They were offered an early retirement or a different program where they got paid for 11 months or whatever that was. So really didn't force anybody out. So customer service, a lot of the customer service comes out of headquarters, out of DC, and our capital access group, which questions about, it could be PPP loans or idle loans or whatever that was. I was just in DC a couple weeks ago. There's 700 people that are in customer service out there to help answer some of those questions.
So what kind of, you mentioned that loans were out, and we have seen in numerous ways the demand for loans across the country in the ag sector, by necessity have gone up quite a bit. So what are you all looking at, and what are these producers looking to, why do they need this additional financial
Well,
backing?
first of all, let me just say I have finished up three in three states. I still have Kansas left. What we call a meat packing roundtable. Um, Obviously, the focus is affordability in regards to you and I both go to the grocery store, and so does all your listeners. I mean, it's tough right now, and what we're trying to do is deploy cash so create more competition with the meat, the meat processing tour that we did. Obviously, we've got a very aggressive program for the meat processors. These are meat processors that maybe have a dozen employees or maybe 200 employees. We're trying to get some competition out there for the big four that we know about. And quite honestly, I don't think the big four play fair. If you talk to farmers, and I've got one farmer that lives at our house during the session, Don Driscoll, who's a Black Angus farmer, they do all the work, and then we know what we pay for our beef when we go to the grocery store, and they're not getting a fair shake, and I don't think they're getting paid fairly. So we're trying to create competition, not only just in the meat processing area, but certainly anything that touches food processing. And we've got a very aggressive program right now where we at the SBA will guarantee 90% of the loan, which is really going to open up the door for a lot more lenders because they have such a little risk if the loan goes into default. So, as I mentioned, I've got, it's a different codes of different areas, and I've got them here if you want to know what they are. But it's basically anything that touches food in regards to production. Obviously, there's a focus on American made. And I come from Iowa. You come from Iowa. My dad had a John Deere dealership in Indianola. I mean, I'm very passionate about agriculture. And I think this program that we have is incredible. I think will alleviate the pain we see at the grocery store.
You mentioned the state senator who lives at your house during the Iowa legislative session, but looking forward, how does her family, how do these smaller producers and ranchers, farmers, how do you see them surviving in the future when we see so many different sectors struggling?
First of all, you've really got a monopoly on the meat processing market. So if we could expand that, I think that'll be favorable to our cattle producers such as her. I think that would be really important. The other thing is, let's talk about tariffs. Tariffs, I hear that at different places where I go, different businesses that have challenges in regards to the tariffs. Obviously, he's cut a lot of deals. The big one out there is China, that I am very confident from what I hear from the White House that they'll get something wrapped up here pretty soon. I know that there was a subsidy that's going out to a lot of people in agriculture to kind of help them out because of the tariffs. But as I've told many people, we know what the President Trump did his last term, and it was painful for a while. But in the end, it certainly was beneficial to people in agriculture. And I truly believe and have full confidence that there will be announcements in regards to China and the tariffs there, and they'll cut a deal. And I think it's going to, in the long run, it's going to be good for the consumer that's out there and good for the people in agriculture. As my old wrestling coach used to say, no pain, no gain. And I truly believe that it's going to be a very bright future for agriculture. And certainly know our Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins. I know she's working hard on that as well. And obviously, agriculture is the backbone of the Midwest. And the president understands that. I certainly, as a former Iowa legislator, understand that. And I think as I mentioned, I think there's a very bright future for agriculture.
The state of Iowa watched what happened to a community of Newton when Whirlpool and Maytag shut its doors, moved a bunch of its operations to Mexico and elsewhere. And they had economic development leaders who tried to figure out, all right, in its heyday, they had several thousand people in this community who worked for the company. What do they do now? And they tried wind. That was one of the things they tried. You mentioned this plant in Nebraska where Tyson's pulling out. It's just so many people. So where does the SBA see the potential for these people to transition so this smaller community doesn't get wiped out?
Well, obviously, I said we're in the efforts to deploy cash for
Mm-hmm.
the small businesses in that community. We're working with workforce development in the state of Nebraska. I've met with the director of economic development for the state of Nebraska, and we're all bringing basically what's going on is we're bringing all of our resources together to be job retraining skills, working with the community colleges as well. And then, of course, if there's people out there, we're offering workshops, and I think we've got a workshop set up where we bring people and say, hey, if you've ever thought about owning your own business, we're here to help you and assist you with the process of getting an SBA guaranteed loan. So there's a lot. It's a coordinated effort, which is what is most helpful. And, in regards to Newton, that's before I was in the legislature, but I definitely remember the challenges there. And I'd have to give credit to the state of Iowa and the local officials on how they've kind of changed Newton. I don't think Newton's struggling as much as it certainly isn't struggling what it was, but obviously with the racetrack out there, there's some industries that were done out there. You mentioned wind. That kind of seemed like that was kind of the area where they did the wind turbines. And so, what we're doing, and I assume that the state of Nebraska is talking to the community leaders, in Nebraska to say, hey, listen, maybe we should look at expanding industry. When I was mayor of Urbandale, we really had a bedroom town there. And we thought, I was kind of tired of being in a bedroom town because obviously you make a little bit more money when it comes to taxes or revenue from commercial properties. And I just at that time said, hey, we're right on 80 and 35. Why don't we get into warehousing, which has really kind of been a boom for Urbandale? But, I'm sure that they're working on a plan, and I certainly feel for those people. But we're going to get out there, and it's not just there, but we were just in far northwest Nebraska. They do a lot of sugar beet harvesting out there, and they've got some plants that close there. We have programs that will come in, and we have a designated area that we offer even some more incentives. And I'm going to assume that will happen with the Tyson plant closing as well.
As you've traveled around these 4 different states, is there something that you can point to that you've seen as positive, as promising in any of these rural areas as some of these towns try to pivot? Like, where's trying to find some bright spots out there where we can see communities that are figuring out if there are going to be fewer people actively farming, then what can they do so that they can support families there?
Well, we're seeing a surge of expansions on manufacturing. And that would be just about anything you could think of. Yesterday, we were at a plant in Omaha that does pipes for sewers and water lines that he sells all internationally, and he manufactures them right there. It's kind of by the Omaha airport. But I see a surge in that. Where you really hit hard in these smaller communities is with some of the services such as grocery stores, medical, and obviously we have a shortage in regards to physicians, and that's a big challenge by itself. There's a lot of things that can be done telehealth. I think that the states, including the state of Iowa, has done a pretty good job of deploying the resources that are needed so people can communicate like you and I are doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that that's a challenge. But, I just was down in southern Kansas and meeting with a bunch of city managers, which we do as well. and we bring our Office of Advocacy come in, and we talk about some of the challenges with the water plant or the sewer plants based on the federal regulations and that kind of stuff. So I'm really, like I said, we're doing what we can. And the other thing that we don't do, which is where we spend a lot of time, unfortunately, is disaster services. We have to deploy. Usually, I'm notified right away when a disaster is having to be flooding or tornadoes, mostly in the Midwest. And then we go out and provide the resources, or actually, that's the only time where we directly lend to people. And what most people don't realize is that the Small Business Administration, when a disaster hits, it's not only the businesses we take care of, nonprofits, churches, obviously residentials, single-family dwellings, as well as rentals. And we go out there and do that. And that is, unfortunately, last year, Missouri just got hit really hard. Mm-hmm. We were spared in Iowa, had a disaster in Kansas and Nebraska as well. But so that's another service that I think is really important to the rural parts. I mean, we had a town in, it was actually northwest Kansas last year, small community that a tornado went in, and it just basically wiped the town off the map. And unfortunately, chances of that being rebuilt is probably slim to none, but we're certainly there to help people in these terrible times.
I wonder if you could explain a little more about when you're trying to figure out the interagency communication to try to stream all of that, especially with USDA, how SBA and USDA are trying to work together to speed development and get information and resources out quicker. How is that happening?
Well, as I mentioned to you, it seems like there was a competition between federal agencies before, and the president just said, hey, you're all going to work together. What's going to be great is that we have this Office of Advocacy, and I would tell all of all the people that obviously love your podcast, is that get a hold of me, because the Office of Advocacy is there to help any business owner or anybody in agriculture that has any challenges with any federal agency. It could be the IRS, it could be OSHA, it could be EPA. And we are trying to bring everybody together to solve some of these problems, other than a Barney Fife out there writing citations right and left. So I think that is really important. As I mentioned before, in regards to some of the challenges with the water plants or the sewer plants, which would be EPA. We're trying to get some common sense in there, but most importantly, bring everybody together to at least communicate and solve these problems. And it's a big thing that the president has wanted to do is, obviously we want to cut the red tape, and we want to be able to let businesses flourish without being harassed by a federal agency.
All right. As we wrap up, talk a little bit about what's this transition like. You were part of politics for a long time, served in the state legislature, ran for Congress a couple of times. You campaigned for this president and had a prominent role. You were one of the most prominent surrogates when he ran the first time, and then you're on board the second time. You can largely step away from politics. You're always going to work for a boss. So that's going to be a Republican, Democrat, whatever. But so what's this like now, where you don't have an R next to your name all the time when you're introduced and all that, and you're out more in a more customer service role, which is the role, as you know, as a public official anyway. But what's that like every day?
It's refreshing. It's been a great run. I served in the Senate for 20 years, mayor 7 years, 2 years city council. As I saw my opponent, and as you know, I got beat the last election, mostly due to redistricting. But I said to him, thank you for beating me. And I said, I miss the people, but I don't miss the grind. I don't miss people coming to my house, Dave, and with pots and pans and bullhorns. Protesting. But, I was really blessed.
I don't like the way you phrased that. That made it sound like I was one of those people.
No. You never were. You're always good to me. Uh, but I got a call, as you mentioned. I was a very early supporter of President Trump. He doesn't forget that stuff, and got a call right after the election saying, "We want you to be part of the team." I looked at a couple of different things. SBA was a perfect fit for me. It's really been an honor. I mean, he calls me the Marlboro Man. By the way, I don't smoke.
Yeah, he said you kind of looked like the old school Marlboro Man,
Yeah,
which is ironic for a
there's
guy who
a
doesn't
story
smoke.
behind
But
it. We were having dinner one time, but I mean, it's just really, it's great. Like you just mentioned, we really don't care what the color of your skin is, your religious affiliation, your sexual orientation. All we care about is that you have a good credit score. But I don't miss it. I mean, I'm there for Democrats, independents, libertarians, Republicans. As long as you've got a good plan that's sound and that's a good credit risk to us based on their credit rating, we're going to be there for you. We're also don't a lot of times, as a mayor, you're looking for the new businesses, but we got to make sure we take care of the existing businesses. And I would say that probably 35% of our loans are existing businesses that want to expand. And I spend a ton of time taking tours and having roundtables with businesses to see what their challenges are, because every business out there takes a heck of a risk, and that includes every farmer that's out there, anyone that's in agriculture, and they're proud of what they've done. And so it's just a fun job. I just really love it. Yes, it's had its challenges. Obviously, the transition from President Biden to President Trump, President Biden had his initiatives, President Trump has his. And the bottom line to everybody out there, the SBA is being run like a business. And I come from a business background, and that's how I run the 4 states. And so it's been an honor and a privilege to be able to do this.
Iowa had a former governor, a Democrat, Tom Vilsack, who became the USDA secretary. He served as the secretary for 3 different terms under President Biden. One of the things he talked about is he felt that, especially in rural areas, there is a disconnect. And while I don't know if he ever specifically mentioned SBA, there is a disconnect for a lot of people about what an entity like the SBA can do for them. Maybe they're distrustful of government or they don't think maybe government can work with them, help them, whatever. How do you address people who frankly don't understand what SBA does, don't understand that they can get a lot of free support from your agency, and that at the end of the day, it's not really, there are going to be political initiatives, but some of the core missions largely stay the same. They just may be carried out differently.
Yep. Well, it's really simple. The SBA has done a terrible job promoting and communicating the services that we do. It is my number one priority, and that's with all my district directors, is get in the field. Tomorrow, I'm going to be with the district director in Des Moines, and we're going to give the Urbandale Chamber luncheon to tell people that. But get out to as many groups that'll listen, and get on the road and tell people all the services that we provide, because so many people don't realize what the SBA, the services that they provide. So we've done bad in the past, and I'm not blaming anybody in particular, but I'm a business guy and I'm a promoter, and we're going to get out there and we're going to let everybody know the services that we provide.
Well, we appreciate the time. Thanks for catching up, and we hope to talk to you again soon. Safe travels.
Yeah, it's an honor to be on your program, Dave. You're a good friend.
We appreciate you. Thank you.
You bet.
Hey, a little more context, by the way. Donald Trump at one time had looked at Brad Zaun at a campaign rally, and he said that he looked like the Marlboro Man, that rugged guy who starred in those cigarette commercials years and years ago. The nickname stuck. Now, no nicknames, but you can still learn more about Brad Zaun and the SBA in our profile piece, which you will find in the weekly American Farmland Owner newsletter. It's the one-stop place where landowners get their news each week for free. You'll find interviews with thought leaders about the challenges, opportunities, and farmland trends in agriculture. We hope you'll check it out right now at AmericanFarmlandowner.com. Thanks for joining us this week for the podcast, and thanks for caring about the future of our farmland.